7 astronauts in Space Shuttle Challenger. On January 28, 1986, 7 astronauts boarded Space Shuttle Challenger for mission STS-51L at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The crew included experienced astronauts, as well as Krista McAuliffe, a civilian schoolteacher selected for NASA's Teacher in Space program. Launch conditions that morning were unusually cold. Overnight temperatures dropped below freezing, forming ice around the launch pad. Despite concerns raised before liftoff, the launch proceeded as scheduled. Challenger lifted off normally and cleared the tower without incident. Telemetry data showed engines and guidance systems operating within expected limits as the shuttle climbed through the lower atmosphere. At 73 seconds after liftoff, observers noticed a plume of flame near the right solid rocket booster. The shuttle continued accelerating as aerodynamic forces increased. The flame breached the external fuel tank. Structural stress rapidly escalated as liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen ignited. The shuttle stack lost structural integrity at high altitude. Challenger broke apart in midair at approximately 46,000 feet. Debris scattered across the Atlantic Ocean as the orbiter separated from the external tank. The crew cabin detached largely intact during the initial breakup and continued traveling upward before falling back toward the ocean. Recovery teams later located the wreckage. All 7 astronauts were killed during the descent and impact. NASA immediately suspended the Space Shuttle program. The investigation identified failure of O-ring seals in cold temperatures. Shuttle flights did not resume for nearly 3 years as safety procedures were revised. Soyuz 1 parachute failure. On April 23, 1967, Vladimir Komarov, age 40, launched aboard Soyuz 1, the Soviet Union's first crewed flight of the Soyuz spacecraft. Komarov was an experienced cosmonaut and test pilot tasked with evaluating a new spacecraft design. Soyuz 1 was intended to test critical systems before future missions. The spacecraft was launched into low Earth orbit and initially reached its planned trajectory. Soon after entering orbit, multiple technical problems began to appear. One of the spacecraft's solar panels failed to deploy, reducing available power. Orientation systems struggled to stabilize the craft, and onboard instruments began malfunctioning. Komarov reported difficulty controlling the spacecraft's attitude. Mission controllers decided to abort the mission early. A controlled re-entry was planned to bring Soyuz 1 back to Earth within one orbit. The spacecraft began its descent sequence as scheduled. As the capsule entered Earth's atmosphere, its heat shield functioned normally. The descent continued toward the final phase, where parachutes were required to slow the capsule before landing. At an altitude of approximately 7 kilometers, the main parachute failed to deploy properly. A backup parachute was released, but it became tangled with the drogue chute lines. The capsule continued descending at high speed. The spacecraft struck the ground at full velocity. Komarov was killed instantly on impact. Recovery teams later confirmed there was no chance of survival. Following the incident, the Soviet space program suspended Soyuz missions. The spacecraft design was extensively modified before human flights resumed. Apollo 1 cabin fire. On January 27, 1967, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee were conducting a ground test inside the Apollo 1 command module at Cape Kennedy, Florida. The test was designed to simulate a full launch countdown ahead of the Apollo program's first crewed mission. The spacecraft was sealed and pressurized with 100% oxygen at a pressure higher than Earth's atmosphere. The crew was strapped into their seats, and the capsule's electrical systems were fully powered. The test was classified as non-hazardous, and no emergency response teams were positioned nearby. During the countdown simulation, multiple communications issues occurred between the capsule and ground control. These problems caused repeated delays while engineers attempted to resolve them. Electrical systems inside the spacecraft remained active as the test continued. At some point during the delay, a spark occurred inside the cabin. In the oxygen-rich environment, fire spread almost instantly. Flames moved rapidly through the cabin, producing extreme heat and thick smoke within seconds. The command module's hatch opened inward and was held shut by internal pressure. Ground crew attempted to open it, but were unable to do so in time. All 3 astronauts died inside the capsule before they could be rescued. The exact ignition source was never definitively identified, though investigators later suspected damaged or exposed wiring. NASA halted the Apollo program immediately. The command module was redesigned with fire-resistant materials, revised wiring, and a quick opening hatch before crewed missions resumed. Valentin Bondarenko, alcohol-soaked cotton. On March 23, 1961, Valentin Bondarenko, age 24, was participating in a training exercise at the Soviet space program's facilities near Moscow. Bondarenko was a young fighter pilot selected as part of the first group of cosmonaut candidates. The training involved isolation testing inside a sealed chamber designed to simulate spaceflight conditions. The chamber was pressurized with pure oxygen at reduced atmospheric pressure. Bondarenko had already spent several days inside the chamber as part of the endurance test. During the final hours of the experiment, Bondarenko removed biomedical sensors from his body. He used a cotton swab soaked in alcohol to clean adhesive residue from his skin. Afterward, he discarded the swab. It landed on an exposed electric hot plate used for heating food inside the chamber. The alcohol-soaked cotton ignited almost instantly. In the oxygen-rich environment, the fire spread rapidly. Flames climbed Bondarenko's clothing and filled the chamber within seconds. Bondarenko attempted to extinguish the fire but was unable to escape. The chamber could not be depressurized quickly without risking further injury. By the time technicians were able to open the hatch, the fire had already burned itself out. Bondarenko suffered severe burns over most of his body. He was removed from the chamber and transported to a medical facility. He died several hours later from his injuries. The incident was classified by the Soviet government and remained secret for decades. Afterward, changes were made to training procedures and oxygen environments used in cosmonaut preparation. Elliot C. and Charles Bassett in Gemini 9 mission. On February 28, 1966, Elliot C., age 38, and Charles Bassett, age 34, were flying a NASA T-38 jet trainer during preparations for the Gemini 9 mission. Both men were experienced test pilots and had been assigned as the prime crew for the upcoming spaceflight. The flight originated from Houston, Texas, and was scheduled to land at McDonnell Aircraft Corporation in St. Louis, Missouri. The purpose of the trip was to inspect the Gemini spacecraft they were scheduled to fly. Weather conditions in St. Louis were poor. Low clouds, rain, and reduced visibility complicated the approach to the airport. Despite the conditions, the flight continued toward its destination. As the jet approached the runway, C attempted a visual landing. The aircraft descended too low while maneuvering near the airport buildings. The T-38 struck the roof of a factory building adjacent to the runway. The jet broke apart on impact and exploded inside the structure. Emergency crews responded immediately, but the crash site was engulfed in fire. Both astronauts were killed instantly. NASA grounded the Gemini 9 mission temporarily and reassigned the backup crew to fly instead. The accident highlighted the risks astronauts faced even outside of spaceflight and led to renewed emphasis on flight safety during training operations. 7 astronauts in NASA Flight STS-107. On January 16, 2003, 7 astronauts launched aboard Space Shuttle Columbia for mission STS-107, a dedicated science flight operated by NASA. The crew included experienced astronauts tasked with conducting experiments in microgravity. Columbia lifted off from Kennedy Space Center under normal conditions. During ascent, a piece of insulating foam separated from the shuttle's external fuel tank. The foam struck the leading edge of Columbia's left wing at high speed. At the time, the strike was not considered critical, and the shuttle continued its climb into orbit. The mission proceeded as planned. Over the next 16 days, the crew conducted a wide range of scientific experiments inside the shuttle's payload bay. Communication with mission control remained normal, and no onboard systems indicated serious damage. As preparations were made for re-entry, Columbia began its descent toward Earth on February 1, 2003. During atmospheric re-entry, the shuttle encountered extreme heat as it traveled at hypersonic speed. Superheated plasma entered the damaged area of the left wing through the breach created during launch. Internal temperatures inside the wing structure began rising rapidly. Sensors recorded abnormal readings as structural damage spread. As Columbia descended over the southern United States, the wing structure failed. Control was lost as the shuttle broke apart in midair at an altitude of approximately 200,000 feet. All 7 astronauts were killed. Following the incident, NASA grounded the Space Shuttle fleet. An extensive investigation led to major safety reforms before shuttle flights were allowed to resume.